Mr. Freeze was so unimportant that when his name was changed to that from Mr. Zero for the Adam West Batman series, nobody really gave a crap. His power begins and ends with a freeze ray, with the added complication that he needs a suit in order to stay cold, unlike Captain Cold, who just needs his Eskimo outfit. He was one of many problems faced by the team creating Batman the Animated Series. The classic Rogues Gallery was part of what made Batman popular, but a lot of them were camp characters. Not so surprising, since it wasn't until The Dark Knight Returns and Crisis on Infinite Earths that Batman went from being perceived by the comics world as camp himself to being seen as the serious character that Dennis O'Neil had changed him to, which was exactly what they wanted for the animated series. Mr. Freeze was a hard one. We are talking about a guy who was once thwarted because Batman was wearing his Bat thermal underwear. I kid you not. Given that, Heart of Ice seems to start in an odd place.
This is how I'll always remember you. Surrounded by winter, forever young, forever beautiful.
And hopping in a circle because your shoe got stuck in the carpet again. Freeze is talking about revenge as he looks at her. More already than you'd expect from a guy who usually had mad scientist as the beginning and end of his characterization. The news reports that some cold-related crimes have been sweeping through Gotham at GothCorp facilities, led by Ferris Boyle. Boyle is played by Mark Hamill before he was cast in the role of the Joker. He really expressed a lot of interest in playing a villain, especially him. And eventually when it was recast, he got it. Boyle puts on the people company face so that in private he can be a complete tool. And speaking of tools, Batman has been busy with the Batcomputer assembling all of those different objects that have been stolen into a single feasible object. The answer, of course, is a giant freeze ray. If you had one more component, that is. And of course, gotta collect them all. Sure enough, the villain heads to the factory where the one remaining component is manufactured and manages to get past security.
Oh, stay where you are!
Thank you, come again. Luckily, Batman's right behind them in the super long Batmobile. Not that it will help when Mr. Freeze gets out and ices up the road, and just when Batman had locked up Dr. Salt. Ironic. Uh-oh. Turn into the skid, Batman! Turn into the skid! Funny, that's supposed to work. Batman will have to hoof it to the scene of the crime now, arriving just as the criminals have finished loading the getaway armored car.
Freeze! That's Mr. Freeze to you.
Yep, Harvard took away his doctorate in the cryosciences, but does he let that stop him? No! Freeze embraces that. I'm gonna own it, bitches! That's Mr. Freeze!
This is a personal vendetta. It doesn't concern you.
Oh, well, why didn't you say so? Obviously, revenge, vendettas in general, he started it acts, are all legal under Senator Indigo Montoya's Prepare to Die Act. Batman resists, so Mr. Freeze starts getting a little generous with the freeze ray.
Johnny!
Uh-oh, workman's comp. I'm smelling a lawsuit. Batman is frozen, but the criminals all gather around their buddy. Don't worry, pal. It'll be okay. I'm dying, Steve. I'm so cold and I can't feel my legs. That's because your legs are frozen, Gary.
Leave him. He should have been more careful.
Hey, you were the one firing that thing off like you were Billy the Kid after a bottle of red-eye. There's a surprising amount of group loyalty among the minions, but not enough to risk getting frozen themselves, so that guy's left behind with frozen Batman. He breaks out and gives up pursuit in order to help the poor bastard. He is the hero after all, so he brings the guy back, blindfolded, to the Batcave and puts him in a Bacta tank. Probably could use something like that for himself. He's got a bug now. Cold by itself doesn't make you sick, you know, but who the hell knows what's in that freeze ray? Medical science probably hasn't determined all the health effects of being shot by a shrink ray either. Bruce Wayne pays a visit to Boyle to ask him what's up with all the robberies, and he says he has no idea. The only one who hates them that much is a guy who died in a science experiment, and now someone in a self-contained suit is attacking with science stuff. This sounds like something for the world's greatest detective to me. Boyle's off. He's accepting a humanitarian award in the field of being a colossal dick, but Mr. Freeze, watching it from his Iceman cave, does not approve.
Industrialist of the Year.
Humanity, compassion, charity. Where were those pretty words when she needed to hear them?
Yeah. Meanwhile, his minions are going, "Geez, why does it need to be freezing in here? He's not even taking the suit off. He's just doing it to be an asshole. And I have to do Gary's job now thanks to Quick Draw McGraw. Man, I should have taken that gig for the Penguin." Elsewhere, Batman is looking over old newspaper headlines for info on that accident, but alas, there was a cover-up. He'll have to infiltrate the company and access the secret files. They always keep secret files around, in case they need to justify the expenses. Covering up death is one thing, but if you screw with the IRS, you'll wish you were the dead guy. So, off to infiltrate the building, but one thing, you may be the peak of human physical training, but you better not go out without your bat chicken soup. The files include information about Nora Freeze, and a tape explains everything, that her husband had developed a revolutionary way to cryogenically preserve her. That sounds like an amazing, surefire moneymaker. Patenting that would make this company billions. So that's when Boyle and his goons show up and shut that shit down. That would mean killing Nora, but Boyle, humanitarian that he is, sends a couple of rent-a-cops over to handle that instead. I'm sure they'll be careful. "Hey Frank, was it the liquid nitrogen before the dimethyl sulfoxide, or would that result in insufficient osmosis to rehydrate tissues during revivification?" "After, dumbass. Jeez, they'll hire any idiot these days." Freeze panics and grabs a guard's gun, pointing it at Boyle, trying to protect his wife, but alas, he's not a killer. And when Boyle seems like he'll be reasonable, Freeze drops his guard and gets drop-kicked into a batch of chemicals for it. Seems like Boyle also won a humanitarian award in the field of martial arts. But Freeze, the actual Mr. Freeze, arrives just as Batman finishes watching the tape and zaps him again. But this time his freeze ray is set on stun, so Batman soon finds himself hanging upside down in an ice cave. Wow, I know Mark Hamill's in this episode, but no need for 2 Empire Strikes Back scenes here. He admits that he survived, but can only do so at sub-zero temperatures now, so Boyle ruined his life by taking away Nora and leaving him with this affliction. So now it's payback time. Batman waits until he's gone and busts himself free of his ice bonds. A perfect plan. Note to self, snow is soft unless you just dropped a bunch of ice chunks into it. Ouch. Freeze has already arrived with his goons, sealing the building with a wall of ice like they were trying to keep out the White Walkers. Batman attacks, if only to recover his utility belt, so Freeze heads up to crash the party himself. It's time to lance a Boyle. Okay, that's not as great of a battle cry as I thought it'd be.
Who are you?
Wait, I remember. You Fries, right? Freeze! It's pronounced Freeze! God damn it! How many times must I tell you? He starts making with the ice, and youch, someone's got a case of shrinkage like an acorn, I'll bet. Batman arrives just in the nick of time, and now for a right! Ah, stupid head bubble! That plus the fact that the suit gives him enhanced strength, and that Batman's sick and all, means soon that he has the Dark Knight at his mercy. So Batman whips out the bat chicken soup and lets that hot stuff hit the frigid glass, cracking the dome open. Dude, I think he's dying. Batman gives the tape to the reporter and tells about what a dick Boyle was. Even if he gets away with it, his company image is ruined forever. But Freeze is still guilty of a whole mess of crimes and gets sent off to Arkham, where he weeps over his failure to avenge his wife for the pointless death. Freeze believes that he is devoid of emotions, cold and logical, and yet the only motivation he had for everything was one of the most primal emotions of all, revenge. And as he cries for her, it's clear, within that cold heart, a white-hot spark still lives on. Heart of Ice is the most popular episode of Batman the Animated Series, at least according to a poll, and it's easy to see why. Taking a minor member of the Rogues Gallery and turning them into a villain with this pathos is not an easy thing to do, especially because Freeze is made sympathetic, yet still villainous. Whatever a dick he was, Boyle was right about Freeze effectively stealing from the company for his own private use, which we can certainly understand, but it also showed where this was going. He would do anything to save his wife, and when she's gone, he would do anything to avenge her. And yet, he possesses no more sympathy for his frozen minion, or for the innocent bystanders at the party, than Boyle did for Nora. But he's incapable of seeing that. Thus it is also a tragedy, twisted by vengeance into becoming something even worse than the thing that he despises, leading to his own inevitable end. We feel for Freeze, and we understand his desire to make that hypocrite pay for what he's done. To see his mask on display for an adoring public must be like a stab to the heart every time he sees it. No wonder he shoots his TV at the sight of him getting a humanitarian award. And yet, we cannot forget what he is, that he has no regard for the lives of others. However much we might sympathize with him for his loss, it doesn't justify the menace that he has become or the unfeeling villain he shows that he is. This episode not only won an Emmy, it was quickly adapted as the true origin of Mr. Freeze in the comics, and even for that dreadful Batman and Robin movie where, hey, as bad as it was, you have to be impressed anytime Arnold Schwarzenegger turns in better acting than Uma Thurman. This isn't the end for Freeze, of course. He returned to face Batman again and again, and next month we will face the new one in Batman Beyond with Meltdown.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!